It can be a lonely and dark place here. Alone. In my head. Drowning in the sea that is my own thoughts. My inner psyche. The self-mutilating inner monologue. The record that I just cannot switch off. But I am no longer alone. It can be a lonely and dark place here. With me. Alone. And I can feel you running through my veins. Guiding me. Drowning in the sea that is walking with me. And you are the spirit of the wild woman. The self-mutilating inner monologue. And you weren't always here. I just cannot switch At one point we were total strangers. But I am no longer alone. But I can still recall the first time I saw you from afar. With me. I was only 9 years old and about to begin my transition into becoming the woman that I am here, standing before you now. And before that I was only a girl, and the only girl in a band of 4, playing music optimistically in a small neighborhood garage band. And I played the drums. I liked the cathartic nature of it. It provided a primitive form of release that just felt natural. And I felt safe, hidden away behind the hide of the toms and the cymbals, but my audio performance made up for my physical absence with my enthusiasm and big sound. And all of the other children in our neighborhood would come and they'd watch us play, especially when Dylan's dad, the local butcher, would have these routine parties. Just to show off his collection of material possessions. It was on the day I'd heard that my grandfather had an accident and hurt himself pretty bad. And I was walking through the park to which he lived the opposite of. And as I approached the bridge to cross to the other side, the boys in my neighborhood all rode up to me on their bikes, blocking the exit and entry points, locking their tires together, creating this circle around me. And I was unable to escape. The eldest and the largest of the mob pulled something from his pocket, and with a quick gesture, he sprung a blade. When the cold steel was pressed across my face, it was apparent that it was a knife, and there was a possibility that I wasn't going to get away from this situation alive. And he screamed into my face, "Is it true? Is it true that you're a girl?" And saliva sprayed from his mouth and all over my face. And I remember looking at him and into his eyes and responding, "You do know that my name is Adrian, right?" And the other boys grabbed me and they held me down, held my arms behind my back, and they viciously cut off my long black hair. "Is it true? Is it true?" And they screamed and shouted all these obscenities. And Dylan was there. And he just stood there and he looked at me with his eyes full of apologies. But behind him was you, standing there. And the other boys grabbed me and they held me down, as if to say, "But I am here. I am here waiting for you." But then you left. And they screamed and shouted all these obscenities. And Dylan was there for what I thought was going to be forever. He looked at me with his eyes full of apologies. I was 15 the next time I saw you, and I'd just given my heart, soul, and entire being to this older man. As if to say, he was tall, dark, and handsome, and smelt like hard labor, and I felt as if I'd found everything and anything that I ever wanted and waited for. But perhaps that was the perplexed, amphetamine gaze that he gave me to wear. I was 15 the next and he was different from anybody else I'd ever met. And I feel still the same way. But now, he was tall, now for a different cause. Like hard labor, and I felt at one point, I just felt so grown up and mature. And the next, I was lost, but perhaps broken, perplexed, numb and catatonic. He gave me to wear. And it was the first time I ever tried LSD. Far North Queensland was experiencing a heat wave, and it was the hottest summer of my life, and my body was constantly in a blanket of my own sweat. I was in his cabin in a rainforest retreat when he pulled out the perforated sheet of LSD, and I had the option to choose which one would be my key to go down the rabbit hole. And then he whispered into my ear, "Eat too," as my body would have built up a tolerance as a result from the pills and powders we had consumed in the past, leading up to this very moment. But then nothing magical had happened, so I ate more, and more, and more. And he whispered into my ear, and more. Eat too. And I tried walking into the forest, trying to have some form of metaphysical experience just to see if God really existed. Leading up to this very moment. And as the plants began to dance around me and radiated and communicated a new form of sentience, I was still not really feeling anything. And more. So when I consumed my 10th piece of the acid-soaked paper, I began to feel a cold. So I put on this jacket, and I can still recall seeing these sweaty people walking by, looking at me strange as I shivered and shivered, and I was freezing. And then I remember his neighbour screaming that I was turning blue and that he was going to call an ambulance. And I remember him responding that it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I'll take care of it. So I put on this
But he
jacket.
wasn't worrying
I can
about
still
me.
recall seeing these sweaty
He was
people
worrying about the
walking
brick
by,
of speed
looking
and
at
the
me
pound of
strange. I
marijuana that
shivered
was
and
inside of his
shivered and I was
cabin hiding
freezing.
under his mattress.
And then I remember his neighbour screaming.
He
that I was
walked me into
turning
the
blue
shower,
and
and for a
going
moment
for
it was
an ambulance.
nice and it was warm.
And I remember him responding,
was
that
relieving.
It's okay, it's okay.
And that cold
take care of
sensation
it.
I was feeling,
But
it
he
was
wasn't
slowly
worrying about
dissipating.
me. He was
And I
worrying
was
about the
naked,
brick of speed and the pound of
but I wasn't
marijuana that was
alone.
inside of his cabin hiding
And I
under his
remember him
mattress.
advancing on me.
He
And
walked
I
me into the
refused his
shower, and for
entry
a
and he
moment it was
refused to
nice,
listen.
and it was warm.
I told him that I was on
And it
my
was
period.
relieving.
However, he chose a different
That
entry.
cold sensation I was feeling,
And I was unable
it was
to
slowly
escape,
dissipating.
as his strength was more
And I was
powerful than
naked,
mine.
But I wasn't
And I still
alone.
remember saying no
And I remember him
as the water
advancing on
ran
me.
down my face that was pressed against the
And I
cold
refused
tiled
his
wall
entry
of
and
the
he
public
refused to
bathroom.
listen. I
And the
told him
more
that
I
was
said
on my
no,
period.
the more
However,
he grabbed me by
chose a
my
different
hair and
entry,
pounded my face against the cold
and I wasn't
tiled
able to
wall.
escape, as his strength was more powerful
And the
than
next thing I
mine.
remember, I was on the floor
I
of the
still
shower
remember saying
in a puddle
no
of my own blood,
as the water ran
with the
down
water
my
still
face that
running
was
down my
pressed
naked
against the
body.
cold tiled wall
But now I
of
was
the public
alone.
bathroom.
And I had wondered if I
And the
just
more I
slipped
said
into a
no,
dream,
the
within
more
a
he grabbed me
dream,
by my
within
hair
a
and
dream,
pounded my
within
face
a
against the
dream.
cold tiled wall.
But the pain was still real. And I
next
found
thing
my
remember,
clothes and I
was
just
on the
ran
floor of the
till I
shower
got to my
in a
friend's
puddle of
house.
my own blood.
And she asked me when
The
she opened
water
the
still
door what
running down
happened
my
to my
naked
face,
body.
and I sat her down and
now
I
I
told her
was
what had
alone.
happened. And
And
she
I'd
refused
wondered
to
if I
believe
just
me and
slipped into a
suggested that it was
dream,
all inside
within
my
a
head
dream,
and I'd
within a
hallucinated
dream,
it and that
within
she
a
just couldn't
dream.
believe me because he was so
But
nice
the
and
pain
I
was still
was on
real.
LSD.
And I found my clothes.
And if
I
she
just
didn't
ran,
believe
ran,
me,
ran till I got to my friend's
then
house.
who would believe me?
She asked me when she
And I
opened
realized
the
that
door what
nobody
happened
was
to my
gonna believe
face, and I
me.
sat her down. And I told her what had
So I
happened.
went home.
And she refused
And
to
then I cut
believe me
myself
and
to see if
suggested
I
it
could
was
still
all
feel.
inside my head, and I'd hallucinated it.
And then
she just
in
couldn't
that
believe me
moment I
because he
remembered
was
the
so
story
nice
of a
and I
woman in my
was on
family from a
LSD.
previous generation and how
And
she
if
had
she
lost her
didn't believe
virginity to
me,
her father and was
then
against
who
her
would
will.
believe
And I
me?
thought to myself,
And I realized that nobody was going to believe me.
well, maybe this means I'm
So
a
I went
woman
home.
now.
And then I cut myself to see if I could
And after
still
a few
feel it.
months, I later awoke one
And
night
then
to
in
find
that
him in my
moment, I
room
remembered
inside
the
of
story
me
of a
with a
woman in
cold
my
blade
family
against
from
my
a
throat.
previous generation,
A feeling
how
that
she
was
had lost
also
her virginity
familiar.
to her father and was against her will.
He slipped
and I
his
thought to
finger into my
myself,
mouth and it tasted bitter from the speed he was putting on my
maybe
tongue.
this means I'm a woman
He
now.
whispered into my ear that if I screamed, he would kill my mother, who was
After a
fast
few
asleep in the
months,
next room.
I later awoke one night to
I
find
was
him in my
defeated,
room
and I
inside
was
of me
scared.
with a cold blade against my throat.
And I was scared that if
A
when this
feeling that
eventually
was
all
so
ended, that
familiar.
I'd wake up to find my mother and her
He slipped
bedroom
his
was
finger into
decorated
my
red
mouth
with
and
her
it tasted bitter
insides.
from the speed he was putting on my tongue.
And
He whispered into
just
my ear
wanted
that
it to
if I
all
screamed,
end.
he would kill my mother, who was
then he
fast
whispered in
asleep
my
the
ear that
next
I know
room.
you're seeing someone else, you
I
filthy
was
whore, making these
defeated, and I was
accusations.
scared.
And eventually he slipped
And I
out
was
into the
scared that
dark
if
of the
when
night,
this
and I was
eventually
left
all
alone,
ended, that I'd
perpetually
wake up to find my
reliving
mother,
this moment
and her
inside my
bedroom was
head.
decorated red
And
with
that's
her
where I found you.
insides.
It's when you came to
And
me.
I just wanted it to all end.
It can be a lonely and dark
Then he
place
whispered
here,
in my ear that I know you're seeing someone else,
and
you
learn
filthy whore, making these
inside my head,
accusations.
drowning in
And
the
eventually
sea that
he
is my
slipped
own
out into the dark
thoughts,
of the night,
my
and I
inner
was left alone
psyche,
perpetually
the
reliving
self-mutilating
this
inner
moment
monologue,
inside my head.
the record
That's
that
where
I
I
just
found
cannot
you.
switch off.
It's
But
when
I'm
you
no
came
longer
to me.
alone, for now you are here,
It can be a
and you are with
dark
me,
place here,
running through my veins, guiding
learn
me, walking with
inside
me,
my head,
and
drowning
together
in the sea that is my
we are
own
the spirit of
thoughts.
the wild
My
woman,
inner psyche, the self-mutilating inner monologue, the record that I just cannot switch off. But I'm no longer alone, for now you are here, and you are with me, running through my veins, guiding me, walking with me, and together we are the spirit of the wild woman.